The hospital heals patients, and they do what they need to do. But David's House heals families, and this is what the families need. Your whole world falls out from underneath you when your child is sick. And you need a place that's safe. You need a place you can go to and talk to people going through the same thing that you're going through.
We found out about David's House when our 3.5-year-old little girl was diagnosed with leukemia. So one of us would come and stay here, and the other one would spend the night with our little girl. It really helped us during those first few months and throughout her treatment to be able to take better care of her.
1979, I was visiting an emergency foster home in Hartland, Vermont, where I met a 10-month-old little boy who was battered and malnourished, in very severe condition. Social services gave me permission to go get David, and we brought him home. And at the age of 22 months old, he was diagnosed with leukemia. And for the next 3.5 years, we went through all his treatments at the Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center.
If you're more than 15 minutes away from the hospital and your child is very sick, that's a long trip. Without David's House, they would have 2 choices, or maybe 3 choices. One would be obviously to travel back and forth to home every night, and another choice obviously would be local hotels. But at $100 a night or more, most cases, when you're talking about families with prematures that are in ICN that are there for a week, 2 weeks, up to 6 months, $100 a night is way beyond what most people could afford.
There was no accommodations there for families. They had a room for a child, and that was it, you know, and the parents did whatever they could to be near the child. It wasn't not the hospital's fault, it's just the way it was. And we started seeing people sleeping in cars in January or June, it didn't matter. People sleeping in the corner of their child's room in a chair.
We stayed here while Morgan was in the hospital. She was going to be here 3 months, and I didn't want to have to leave my son at home, so this was perfect that we got to stay here as a family. We went every day to see Morgan in the hospital, and then we came back here and relaxed and played on the playground and had supper, and then did it all again the next day.
Hi, come on in.
My favorite David's House story was when I was volunteering one morning, and it was fairly early in the morning, must have been just 8 o'clock, and there was a little girl who came out in her pajamas and her hair was all rustled. You could tell she had just gotten up, and she wanted to know, where's the fridge here so I can find some milk? And she went toddling into the kitchen, and to me that's David's House, because this was her home and she had just woken up and was just looking for milk.
We were able to keep our family together when we were going through such a hard time. If not, Noah would have had to go home and stay with different family members while I stayed up in a hotel. And he got to stay up here and bond with his sister, and we got to stay together as a family.
David would go through one relapse after the other, but he always struggled and made it through. And he befriended all the children at the hospital and the parents. You know, I realized that he invited everybody to his house.
This kind of sounds cliche, but they use home away from home. It is a home away from home. It's 15 rooms. They range in size from housing one person up to a family of 5 or 6. We've used about all of them. And it's a place you can come back from the hospital and be alone if you want. You can chat and unwind or laugh or cry. It's a safe place that's very close to the hospital, thankfully.
Unfortunately, over the last 5 years, we've had to turn away over 900 room requests because the house has been full. The good news is that we do have a solution for this. We have come up with a plan to add 4 new bedrooms to the house, which is going to take care of 90% of the turnaways that we've had. Our $4 million comprehensive campaign is called Keeping David's Promise, and it will allow us not only to build the facilities that are needed to house these families, but also to include 2 years of operating support and an endowment component, which will help us with long-term reserves that we need in order to have full financial stability.
Like your home, you have expenses, you have food, and you have utilities, and we have some staff that help keep the house going, although most of the day-to-day operations that people see are run by volunteers. And then for the longevity of the house, we need to be building our reserves so that we can keep the house going during hard times in the economy. We can't take a chance that we won't have the funding to keep the lights on.
David's house allows parents to stay connected with their children while their children are in the hospital. Not just parents, but siblings, and sometimes when there's something life-threatening, grandparents. When you have a tragedy like that, you need all of the support that you can get.
In June of 1984, David was in a bad way, and Dr. Neil Cornell, David's oncologist, we're out in the waiting room, and he asked if I could come into his office for a minute, and I did, and he told me that David only had a few months to live. And I had heard that twice before, and I never believed it, but I knew that this time it was going to happen. So I asked Dr. Cornell why we didn't have some kind of facility for these parents that were struggling so hard and all that, and he said he didn't know, but attempts had been made for the last 10 years, but nothing ever happened. And I blurted out, we're going to build a house and call it David's house. Whenever anybody gave him money for birthday, or I'd give him a couple of dollars if he wanted to do a little chore around the yard, just, you know, for something to do. And every time he gave money, he hid it all over that house. Anyways, David died on September 8th of 1984. And I went around the house and collected all David's money that I could find. I'm sure there's still money in the house because he hid it in the most unique places. And it came to $300.78. That was the first money that went into the house. And from there, it's just history.